The fascinating story of Flex, the Stuttgart engineers who invented the angle grinder. If you've ever held an angle grinder in your hands, whether you were cutting through metal, grinding welds smooth, or slicing tiles, you were holding a tool with a remarkable origin story, one that stretches back over 100 years to a small workshop in Stuttgart, Germany, and two engineers with a bold idea and the determination to see it through. This is the story of Flex. It begins on the 7th of December, 1922, in a district of Stuttgart called Bad Cannstatt. Two engineers, Hermann Ackermann and Hermann Schmidt, sat down and made it official. They founded a company together, signing their own names to it, Ackermann and Schmidt. But what they were really founding wasn't just a business. They were planting the seed of an entirely new category of tool. Their first product was called the MS6. It was a handheld grinding machine, portable, electrically powered, and unlike anything else being made at the time. The key to it was a flexible shaft. The electric motor sat at one end, and through a bendable, flexible shaft, it drove the grinding head at the other. This meant the operator could maneuver the tool into tight angles, awkward corners, and difficult positions that a rigid machine simply couldn't reach. It was clever, it was practical, and it worked. The flexible shaft became so central to the identity of the machine and to the brand that they named the tool after it. They called it the Flex. That single word, taken from the Latin for bend, became the foundation of everything that followed. It also gave the German language a new everyday verb. To this day, the act of using an angle grinder in German is simply called flexen, to flex. The brand name became the verb. That's how deeply this tool embedded itself into the culture of work. Through the 1,920 seconds, Ackermann and Schmidt refined their machine and built their business. But as the decade came to a close, they made a critical engineering decision. The flexible shaft, for all its ingenuity, had limitations. It wore out. It needed maintenance. And there was a better solution waiting to be developed. They replaced the flexible shaft with an angular gearbox. Instead of bending the power delivery, they redirected it mechanically, using gears set at a right angle. The motor ran in one direction, and the gears turned that force 90 degrees, driving the grinding disc at the head. The angle grinder was born. It was a simpler, more robust, more reliable design. The fundamental principle, a motor driving a spinning abrasive disc through a right-angle gear, is the same one used in virtually every angle grinder made today. What Ackermann and Schmidt arrived at in that Stuttgart workshop nearly a century ago is still the dominant design across the entire industry. The 1,930 seconds brought growth, but also the gathering shadow of war. In 1935, the company launched a low-speed angle grinder, the first of its kind, expanding the range of tasks the tool could handle. Business was progressing. Their name was becoming known in industry. And then, the Second World War arrived and changed everything. Like countless German manufacturers, Ackermann and Schmidt were compelled to redirect their production. The factory that had been building grinding tools was turned over to support aircraft manufacturing. The civilian product line ground to a halt. The war consumed the company's resources and its people. In 1941, tragedy struck directly. Hermann Schmidt, one of the two founders, one of the two men whose names were on the door, was killed in action on the Eastern Front in Russia. He never saw the post-war world. He never saw what his company would eventually become. Hermann Ackermann survived the war, but he returned to a company that had been stripped bare. When the war ended in 1945, the factory buildings were largely still standing, but French dismantling teams moved in and removed most of the manufacturing machinery. The tools that had built the tools were gone. Another man might have walked away. Ackermann didn't. The rebuilding was slow and unglamorous. Ackermann restarted production with whatever he could manage: scissors, hand grinders, basic tools. Step by step, he brought the company back to life. He kept the name, he kept the mission, and he kept working toward the product that would define the brand. In 1954, the effort paid off in a way that would echo through history. That year, Ackermann and Schmidt, now operating under the Flex name in all but official title, launched the DL9. It was the world's first high-speed angle grinder. Nothing like it had been commercially available before. Where previous angle grinders had operated at lower speeds, the DL9 ran fast enough to cut and grind with dramatically greater efficiency. The DL9 became the company's defining product almost immediately. It swept through the metalworking and construction industries. Fabricators, welders, builders, engineers, everyone who worked with metal or hard materials took notice. The tool was powerful, handheld, and versatile in ways that previous machines couldn't match. And because the tool was called a flex, because the brand had been synonymous with this style of machine for 30 years already, the DL9 didn't just become a popular tool, it became the angle grinder. The product so thoroughly dominated the market that its brand name replaced the generic term. Across Germany and beyond, workers didn't ask for an angle grinder, they asked for a flex. In 2006, the word flex was formally added to the Duden, the authoritative dictionary of the German language, as a recognized common noun. A brand name had become a word. That is a rare achievement in any industry. In the decades following the DL9, Flex continued to evolve. The cast iron housings of the early machines gave way to lighter, stronger, modern plastics. The motors grew more powerful. The ergonomics improved. But the underlying principle, the right angle gearbox, the spinning abrasive disc, the handheld format, remained exactly what it had always been. The company also expanded beyond angle grinders. Flex developed polishing systems for car paintwork, natural stone, and furniture. They invented a burnishing method for producing seamless finishes on metal and stainless steel surfaces. One of their most distinctive later innovations was the Flex Giraffe, a long-neck sander on an extendable pole designed specifically for working on walls and ceilings. It was the first machine of its type in Europe, and it transformed how painters, plasterers, and drywall finishers approached large surface work. In 1996, 74 years after Ackermann and Schmidt signed their founding papers, the company officially changed its name to Flex Elektrowerkzeuge GmbH. It formalized what everyone had been calling it for decades. Ownership changed hands several times in the decades that followed. Flex passed through a partnership with the American brand Porter Cable, then to Stanley Black & Decker after a 2004 acquisition, then through a series of financial investors. In 2013, all shares in Flex were acquired by Chervon Holdings, a Chinese power tool manufacturer. Flex today operates as a premium brand within the Chervon Group, still based in Steinheim an der Mur in Baden-Württemberg, a town near Stuttgart, not far from where the whole story began. The tools are still built with the precision and ambition that Ackermann and Schmidt brought to their first workshop in Bad Cannstatt. The Flex name still carries weight in professional trades around the world. And the angle grinder? That ingenious combination of motor and right-angle gearbox that two German engineers developed from a flexible shaft over a century ago, is now one of the most widely used power tools on the planet. There's something worth sitting with in this story. Two engineers, working in a modest workshop in a German industrial town, solved a practical problem with a practical solution. They didn't set out to change the world. They set out to build a better grinding tool. And because their solution was genuinely clever, because the angular gearbox driving a handheld abrasive disc was simply the right answer to the problem, it spread. It spread through workshops and factories. It spread across industries and across borders. It survived a world war, the death of a founder, and the dismantling of an entire factory. It outlasted every obstacle put in its path, because the underlying idea was sound. 100 years later, the angle grinder is everywhere. On construction sites, in fabrication shops, in garages and backyards. If you've ever seen someone cutting rebar, grinding a weld, or slicing through a bolt, you've seen the direct descendant of what Hermann Ackermann and Hermann Schmidt built in Stuttgart in 1922.